Fons, maybe you can tell us a bit what you see as the main challenges for youth involvement, but also maybe some of the barriers that you think young people face, and maybe you have some examples from the Netherlands.
Yes, thank you, Katie. So my name is Fons Jansen. I'm 26 years old. I live in the rural areas in the north of the Dutch province of Limburg, close to where Commissioner Frans Timmermans lives. I work for 3 days. I work as a digital worker from the rural areas on the European Climate Pact for the Benelux region. And for 2 days, I'm doing like flexible work, what society really needs at this moment, because we're in this energy crisis and a lot of positive social movements are existing. And in 2019, we had the big youth movements. In 2018, we had the Yellow Vest movements. And now we see that citizens in communities are working together to insulate the houses of your neighbors, to really protect the most vulnerable ones. And I think all of us here are coming back home or are staying in Brussels. And I really encourage you, take some time off, work for the Fridays for Future, to look around with your citizens. Because if you do these things outside of your normal work, but you also decide a little bit to work with your direct colleagues or with your direct friends on it, you really experience why we are doing this just transition. For me, I'm here to represent the youth as far as I can do, because youth is not one group. It's intersectional, and in some ways we are well engaged. For instance, some of the youth stakeholder groups of Generation Climate Europe are also attending these events, but also many youth groups are not engaged, also not on local level. Like, I would like to correct Mr. Smits that, of course, local politics is closest to the citizens, but also many local municipalities lack decent citizen engagement. Only 6 out of the 30 municipalities in my province have a youth council. My provincial youth council has not even is not properly supported by my province. And there I see a big gap, because the just transition is not only a technical or social element, it's also a democratic project. Because this next generation wants to be involved, but is often not engaged in existing civil society or in governments. It's only a small minority. I'm an exception, because I studied on a university. I learned about the miracles and the support that the European Union is providing. But even though I'm living in a border region close to a just transition region with the chemical industry, which is become a chemical industry because of a former coal mining region, none of my people in my area are engaged in EU programs or have ever been consulted proactively by companies or by civil society how they want to be engaged. Last week, I got a phone call from my own province saying, "Hey, Fons, you're doing a cool job on advocacy. Would you like to be in the steering committee in my province?" I'm quite glad to hear that they managed to find me. I've been working with the province for 2 years on the regional energy strategies. But I said, maybe, I'm not confirming. Because if you put me directly in this position, but you're not helping me out with the capacity building, I need to do this freely for 2 days. 2 days a year, I need to decide on projects. How can I do that if I don't have a supporting background office? How can they expect me that I can represent youth if you don't support me in the preparation phase? And that's crucial for you to understand that this just transition is in a wider democratic framework, and we all need to work on it. I see, luckily, a lot of young professionals are in this room, but I also see that it can be more, because youth is not only young workers, it's also students. I saw students in this building walking by, but they're not in this room. And it's very important that you bring along your friends and your young colleagues along with it, because this just transition is for the coming 20 to 30 years. So to stress again, like, the importance for youth participation, if you make debts, you borrow from the future. If you choose fake solutions with these plans, you endanger the health of my generation, not only physically but also mental. And if you refuse to collaborate with us and empower us in this democracy, you steal the time to prepare us for the future. Because if Europe will be climate neutral in 2040, our generation needs to prepare to also help out Africa and Asia. Because that's also just transition. It's intersectional. It's on the various geographical levels and the various stakeholders. Good examples is what I see in the province of Groningen. Groningen used to be a very important place also for natural gas. We had much natural gas extraction, and the companies, including with the government, keep extracting natural gas until a couple of years ago, and now people are still suffering earthquakes. It's really a just transition region because they see that they have been neglected for multiple decades. But the reason why they managed to be proactive is because they realized that they should act together as a province, that they have already expertise in energy, so just transition with coal and natural gas regions is natural for them, much less that's the case in industrial regions. They have a provincial youth council, which has been engaged too late, but still they have one and they engage that. And they have like technical expertise from universities and applied sciences engaged. And some of those regions don't have it, so you need to complement it. Lastly, I think when it comes to youth participation, it's important indeed to have them on the steering committee or at least an advisory group, but also make sure that with existing stakeholders, you have a youth shadow council. So bring along your young professional and have them like Sherpas pre-meetings to pre-discuss these elements, because then they learn these things and maybe indeed more interesting outcomes from it before the big bosses finally decide. And I think then a youth representative on the steering committee can really have a new group dynamic for the transition. So that's like my perspective on it.
Thanks a lot, Fons. Before I invite Alexandru, maybe I found it interesting, someone was mentioning in the chat that an issue is also that young people leave actually the rural areas, so because there's a lack of opportunity. From your perspective, because I guess you also talk to the young people there, like what makes them stay, or how can we ensure they stay and then involve them, maybe?
Yeah, so in my area, I see the cosmopolitans and the regionalists. If you study in university, you learn the global world. But if you study in applied sciences and vocational work, your heart is in the region and you don't want to leave, unless you are being forced to. I think what is really important is that you bring this highly mobile and very knowledgeable people back into the region. I decided not voluntarily to live back with my parents. Because of the housing crisis, because of the corona crisis, I had to come back to my province. And first, I found it very difficult because we're an independent young man trying to make the next step, and then you're together isolated in a rural country, luckily with good friends, because I still feel very connected with my village. But those people are already willing to stay, because luckily in the Netherlands, the socio-economic conditions are much better than in some other regions in Europe. But what they really want to is that they are proactively engaged, because they see me, I try to connect with them and explain about why am I doing this and why it is also relevant for them. But I cannot only do that. It also needs to be schools that are talking about it. It's also the Green NGOs and the local politicians that reach out to them, because they see that I'm this individual proactively helping out people, and they say, hey, they give me a pat on the shoulder, but they're not seeing how important this just transition means for the coming 30, 40 years. And that's a mentality shift that needs to change. And to give some examples how the European Union could do that proactively, because right now we are in the heart of Brussels and it's important to reflect what each role can be. So I'm from the Climate Pact. In each country you also have a colleague like mine that is doing the social innovation work of the European Green Deal. Use it, because it's good for social participation and communication. You've got the Climate Kick, which are the smart clean tech entrepreneurs all across Europe, highly mobile. Invite them for your brainstorm sessions, because they bring the ideas from Europe to you. You don't need to solve it alone as a region. You have the Europe Direct Centers, also very actively engaged, local libraries and local NGOs, they can help you. And you also have the Solidarity Corps in Erasmus+. Especially Solidarity Corps, it says solidarity among the regions. Don't wait until you have all your plans finished and then you go into execution. Talk now and after this meeting directly with the youth stakeholder that you know in your region. Say, hey, we've got a subsidy program for solidarity to bring talent from Europe to our region to discuss and see, hey, how can young people be engaged in a just transition in our region? So don't only look from the framework of DG Regio and DG Energy. Talk of DG Klima, talk of DG EAC. We have the European Year of Youth. Next year is the European Year of Skills. So let's continue this line.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, also for sharing some of your personal experience. I think that's been very valuable and interesting. I would like then to